If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Chelsea, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 271 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Great to have you back for what's sure to be a classic episode for the ages. Screenwriter, director Evan Matthews is with me today. That's right. Director of Recoil, the Teleios Act, has amazing stories from the time he was Mark Burnett's right-hand man producing the MTV Music Awards. And so, I got to save some for the show. That's coming up in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, do not miss my conversation with Craig Shemin, president of the Jim Henson Legacy and author of Sam and Friends, the story of Jim Henson's first show. That is a Mupperific episode, but also Mupperific is today's interview with Evan Matthews, giving us the ins and outs of film school, shooting his record-breaking, award-winning short films. So much goodness coming up right now. All right, everyone. I'm excited to introduce my next guest, writer, director, ingenue. Is that fair? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Evan Matthews. Hello.
Hey, it's great to be here.
I was checking out your movies too. I watched two of your shorts. I watched Recoil and the Teleios Act. Mm-hmm. Dude, you got skills. You're talented. I mean, wow.
So I've been trying to tell everybody.
I get reach outs all the time. I get people reaching out.
You get reach arounds I get it.
Pisses off my wife. It just nothing gets her more upset. You watch some movies and you're like, oh, nice home movie. And then, Evan, these were like insanely good. And I know you didn't do them on huge budgets or anything like that. I just mean but everything about it was great. The visual, I don't need to tell you. I just wanted to start off with, I was blown away.
I appreciate that. That never gets old. So I will always take it. So it's one of those, and you get distance between those projects. You kind of forget war stories behind and they start coming back to you. You're like, yeah, that was really hard. Yeah, I almost wanted to quit everything after that. Like Recoil almost just totally broke me. It made me want to just reconsider going into filmmaking after already dedicating, 7-8 years in the industry. At that point, it was so hard. But then there was so much fruit that came from it afterwards. It was absolutely worth it. And now me and even like the VFX team and everyone involved, we all look back on that movie fondly as like one of the best experiences of our lives, even though it was incredibly brutal. Those were really hard work. Especially Recoil, I think we made that for around 55 grand for that short film, which sounds like a lot, but for your viewers and anyone listening, if you go watch that movie, you can see it on the Dust channel or you can see it on my YouTube channel, which is very small. We had to build a set from scratch. Like there's no spaceship sets around Los Angeles, and the ones that are like standing sets have been shot on to death, and you don't want to look like everybody else's movie. So you want to make something from scratch, and the spaceship is a character and a story point, and that's got to come across, and you got to do it right and make sure the people that are building it aren't just using the budget for beer money. So you have to keep checking in. And that was my USC thesis film, by the way, because I got into the master's program there. Yeah, really swung for the fences on that one. And then the Teleios Act, that was done for about, just over 10 grand, 2.5, 3 days of filming. That was a fun one. I can dig way deeper into both of those movies. So it's up to you.
I do want to dig deeper into both, but let's go backwards real quick. And I don't think 50,000 is a lot. I would imagine if Tom Hanks was on a film, 50,000 would cover like his lunch budget.
Probably. I heard Michael Bay's microphone budget is like $30,000 for throwing megaphones around. So there's different ways to spend that money.
So just so everyone knows, because we'll probably be talking about a bunch of different things, but I'll put links in the show notes so you can check these short films out, and they're well worth it, I promise, because I'm banking on this interview being one of those things that they look back years from now and go, oh, famous director Evan Matthews. Oh yeah, look at this old recording he did on Classic Conversations. What was like growing up, like what sparked your interest in movies and wanting to be a movie maker?
Oh man, it's going to be like the most cliche thing in the whole world. I was just such a Star Wars kid. I remember being like a little boy and watching, it was The Empire Strikes Back. There's some cable channel where there's like commercials in between and you're like trying to watch the movie. And I was just like, is Yoda real? I can't even believe it. Yet that little frog guy is a real thing. I mean, just total escape. And I lived in Connecticut at the time and there was plenty of snow. So me and my brothers would like jump on each other and we're each Han Solo riding Tauntauns trying to find Luke and just having our little adventures in the backyard playing Star Wars. It was just something we fell in love with. That started a love of just fantasy, falling in love with movies that you actually want to go to the theater to see. And that just hasn't changed all these years later. But I never thought that was something that would ever be in the cards for me. Especially living on the East Coast, being so far from Hollywood. I was like, that's a pipe dream. That's not something that a real scenario for me. So we'll just figure out my course of action as it comes at me.
I think Star Wars probably inspired a lot of people. For me, it probably like, it was just the beginning of like a love of pop culture. I don't know if I'm older. I actually saw Star Wars in the theater.
I think my mom told me she brought me when I was a baby to like Return of the Jedi or something like that. It was just, she was like, yeah, we waited in line and brought you guys with us because it was like the biggest thing in the world to do was to go see. I'm from 1981, so I wish I could have seen it in theater and like have the blockbuster experience. I mean, what was that like? Do you remember like going and seeing in theaters?
Movies were different back then because like now I feel like movies come out and like a month later they're gone. When I was a kid growing up, like a movie came out and it was in the theater, like it felt like forever. I remember going on my birthday. It was a very specific thing. We came home and the power went out. It was a fun memory. We were like with the neighbors and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I remember seeing it a bunch of times. And then when the special editions came out and they re-released them one by one with the special edition versions, I remember going back and watching it again. There's something about watching like old movies. Like I went and saw The Wizard of Oz on the big screen. One of our Fox Theater ran on the big screen. Like some things, it's interesting to watch like and get that experience.
Yeah, you just want to like go back and see it. Like there's some theaters here in Los Angeles, like there's the ArcLight. They'll have like specialty screenings every month. You can like, they'll just put on Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. You can just go watch it in the theater again, which is amazing. Just got an email today for the Aero Theater in Santa Monica. You can go see Memento. I'm going to go do that. Like, it's so cool. We can go and see these things in the theater and re-experience them. But now we're a little older, so we have a new lens in which to experience and pick up new things. And to go back into that big dark room again, it's so special.
Well, there's just something about it being really big. I was just watching Ahsoka and I was traveling, so I watched it on my iPhone.
Okay.
And then I got home and my wife was like, I'm interested in that show. And I'm like, oh, we should watch it. I've never seen it. So like, yeah, let's check it out. And every now and then I would slip and like, knew too much because I'd seen it. But watching it even on my big screen TV was a much better experience than on the iPhone. So as great as it is to have portable devices, you lose things the smaller they get. So the bigger they get, you start to see some of these details that come out.
Yes.
I think even in one of your short films, you're like, put on headphones, don't play this through your speaker.
Oh, yeah. It's like in my description at the bottom. Yeah. And you know why that was? Because when I was making Recoil, I knew I was going to go to film festivals, blanket to submit to as many things as I could get into, especially when you're like a hard sci-fi movie like that. You can get into a lot of the like specialty niche festivals that really are catering to that. So we went to like over 50 film festivals around the world and we got like 22 nominations, like over 10 awards, which is pretty good. And it's very competitive in that space. And it's a ton of fun. And you have like fervent fans and I love it. It's the best because I'm one of those fans. And I knew that I was going to screen a lot. So we were always debating, are we going to do like a stereo mix for people to watch screeners or watch online? Or are we going to do a 5:1 so we can have the best theatrical experience possible? So me being a greedy filmmaker, I was just like, let's do 5:1. Let's do 5:1 and give people the bigger experience. But so for the shelf life of the movie, it doesn't perform as well in people's laptops and phones unless you put your headphones on and you have a little bit of bass to it and you get more of the atmospheric experience from it. So it does enhance it. So I try to push that on people when I can, because there's no more theatrical screenings unless I start holding my own specialty Los Angeles screenings one day. So fingers crossed that all works out and there's some sort of retrospective at some point for friends and family, at least maybe.
Evan, are you a fan of The Twilight Zone?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an episode I referenced for the making of Recoil. There's a specific episode of The Twilight Zone. I'm totally blanking on it.
I wasn't saying like specific, I didn't tie it back to a specific thing, but the vibe of Teleios Act and Recoil, the type of storytelling where it
Yeah.
seemed like inspired by, like a Rod Serling type, which I dig. It's like a futuristic story. The ending's not what you expect. I mean, that's a good thing.
I mean, that's what you're aiming for as a filmmaker as well, because first of all, you want to straddle that line. You want to be as neutral as possible. So people are constantly doing 2+2, trying to figure out the movie. So they're actively engaged in it. And then you take them someplace else. But I love that you have like these alternate worlds where there are these cautionary tales of sorts, whether with Recoil and the brother relationship, and that's more of an emotional one, or the societal stakes in Teleios Act. It gets people thinking, and it's fun because when you do like Q&As afterwards, you actually end up getting a lot of questions like, what happened to this? What happened to that? Is there a feature length version? Where does it go from here? So, and that's a fun game to play, and you want people to be engaged because then they're attaching themselves to the story, to your characters. They're getting it. Mission accomplished there. So that's always a treat when it keeps the conversation going, because it used to be like that. You go to the theater and then you're hanging out with your friends afterwards and you're still talking about the movie. Go to Denny's or whatever, and you're just having some pie and you're talking about the movie still, what you like, what you didn't like. I have like some real crazy cinephile friends that see stuff that I haven't even seen. I'm like, dude, what are you talking? How do you have time to watch all that? It's just crazy. But they'll bring like different perspectives and different things out of the movie, and then you nod along and say, yeah, it was kind of like that, huh? So trying to bring that back into it.
I would like to dive deeper into your reference of Denny's of all places.
It's just, it's that greasy spoon place. Well, I also, just being like poor college kid or high school kid, it's like you just go to Denny's and everyone else is kind of there. It's close to the movie theater, at least where the theater was in Danbury, Connecticut, where I grew up. Even in high school, I did some high school out here in California. That's what brought me out to California. Yeah, it's just a memory of like hanging out after hours, very innocent, just talking movies. I worked at a movie store, like at a rental house. In this very specific time when it was transitioning from VHS to DVD. And by the time of like my 2 years there, that was when Blu-ray and I think it was like HD DVD, like there was like the two competitors at the time were both like on the shelves. It was always a part of the conversation where I was always talking shop, always talking about movies, never knowing I would actually end up going in that career path. That love was just already there. And I love that I got to work in a movie store. I was not Blockbuster. They never hired me. I could never pass like their background check or something. Not that I was super shady or anything. I couldn't get into Blockbuster. So we're at this mom and pop place called Video Depot because it's a cast of characters that work there and that frequented the place. So
the ma and pa places were the best, and the manager or staff suggestions.
Yes. Everyone had their taste profiles. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to take a quick break while I check out the manager selections at my local video store, or just whatever's on the Netflix preview. But seriously, I do want to take this moment to thank all of you for your support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations, and that's how we keep the lights on. And now back to my conversation with Evan Matthews. He's going to school us on film school. And we're back. You mentioned you went to USC, School of Cinematic Arts. What is it to get a degree in filmmaking? Like, what kind of classes do you get? What advantages does it give you to have that degree versus just the natural talent? Like, what does it teach you, or is it just a lot of theory? Like, I'm curious.
It's a little bit of both. They have a bunch of different disciplines at USC. So the main program, the School of Cinematic Arts, is focusing on all things production. And you're pretty much going to choose your discipline and your emphasis within that track, because they also have like the VFX school, and then they have like the composers school, and then strictly screenwriting only. And production covers all of it. So you can it's this umbrella program. So for me, I want to go in for directing, but you have to do a little bit of everything. You have to edit, you have to do sound design, you have to crew other people's projects, you have to produce, you have to write. But I went in with the intention of directing. It's a pretty competitive program. I think about when I was attending, it was about 48 people got in for the year. You start out with its theory, like film, a little bit of film study and analysis, which was my background with my undergrad at UC Riverside, which is like the middle of California. Everyone knows where it is because they're trying to get out of there. Day I graduated, me and my brother, I have a twin brother, and we just do everything together. We like left and moved to LA. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have an apartment. We just went to some like giant structure that probably had a vacancy and got a place. Anyway, but USC, Yeah, you have to take like ideation classes. So it's a combination of theory and then there's like the practical application. Like you have like your first semester, you're going to make a short film. And then every semester after that, you're going to focus on a different discipline. You might not be making more short films. You might be contributing to other people's or satisfying like some sort of graduation requirement or like advanced program by crewing it in some capacity, like being a producer on a documentary or editing a documentary. And I did all of those things. I really put myself in every single position. I tried everything out. And I actually realized how incredibly important screenwriting was. And that was about halfway through film school. I was so hardcore going into directing. And I got to a point where I'm like, all right, do I know enough? Because I'm making stuff, creating things, I'm pushing the limits, but I don't feel like my work is as good as it could be. And I want to have more confidence working with actors as well. So I figured, okay, I have to switch gears and move into screenwriting. So I took my first screenwriting class. I absolutely loved it. It was just like such a mind-opening experience. I'm like, okay, learning the structure, how to work and turn a scene. Like instead of me just accidentally kind of getting it right just from whatever I osmosed from movies over the decades, now I'm being very deliberate in my action and how I'm applying myself. So now I'm on this directing path, I'm on the screenwriting path. So I end up going for a dual emphasis in the production program. So now I'm going to satisfy a requirement for both directing and screenwriting. And to finish out the directing one, you have to direct a thesis film. To finish out the screenwriting one, you have to write a feature-length screenplay and then completely rewrite it and have a whole new clean draft you can use if you're going to submit to agents or festivals or whatever. So I did both. I pitched a very ambitious thesis film. Now, not everyone gets to direct a thesis film. They only pick a handful each year, whatever graduating semester you're aiming for. And I was like one of the 6 at that particular time. And they're like, Evan, you're never going to be able to make this movie. You're probably going to spend $200,000 to $300,000, and it's going to take you about 3 years to make it by our estimation based on what other students have done in the past. But they never had a student make a movie with that many VFX shots. I actually set like a school record with 265 VFX shots in Recoil. And it was a beast. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had only taken like VFX 101 in like the VFX program that they offer, and you can have like crossover education. So I took the VFX intro class just to have like a basic language. And then I really got lucky with the new VFX faculty member that came in. His name is Mike Fink. Mike Fink won the Academy Award for the Golden Compass, but he's worked on everything from like Blade Runner to the 89 Batman and creating the VFX for that to like Terminator and Jurassic Park. He's one of those guys you meet in Hollywood who's just done everything. He's had his hand in everything. So he walks in, nobody knows he's there because he's brand new, except for me, because everyone's like, we're too busy. You should go talk to this guy. So me and him partnered up, became buddies. And now you can't like get an appointment with the guy. Everyone's trying to knock his door down. But for like 2-3 semesters, it was me and him every single week, plugging away, him talking me into cutting shots, talking me through shots, looking at rushes, putting me in touch with like his VFX friends, finding different shortcuts with how to like get faster shots created or less complex like node grids in Nuke or Maya to be really efficient with your time and your rendering. So just little things that just go a long way. So I'll always be a huge advocate for like mentors and mentorship or even hiring coaches. Essentially, this is what USC will provide you or any film school really. And this is the advantage. There's pros and cons, but the advantage is that you can time collapse and have a bubble that's really focused on you and whatever you want to do. Because I came from like working in the entertainment industry, really climbing the ladder, having a lot of jobs, anywhere from like an intern to production assistant to key PA to an assistant to executive assistant to producer, and then hitting the reset button because I was being like, typecast as like a reality person. I was not a reality person, but that's what I was the most successful at that point. All my training up until that part of my career was in film. So I had to hit the reset. I always worked for somebody else. It was time for me to just work on myself. So you have like 3.5, 4 years where you can do that and shorten the time length. You can get all these experiences in. So instead of saying, okay, I take 10 years to try to do all these editing jobs and sound design and blah, 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 you can do it in like 3 to 4 years. So you could save a lot of time there. So that was a lot. I can just keep talking, but if you want to jump in.
No, it's fascinating. It was a great answer. I wanted someone who were interested in following that path. I mean, I think that's a great amount of information and guide the Mark Burnett stuff and those internships, did that come before the school or was that after?
That was before USC, believe it or not. Yeah. So that was all after UC Riverside, where I got my major in film theory and critical studies. So they didn't have any production, anything. They had one camera you could rent. I rented it multiple times and took the same class multiple times just so I could make short films, which like nobody sees because they're so bad. We would do in-camera editing because I didn't know how to edit. So I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot this. All right, I'm going to move the camera and shoot this and then shoot this. And it's just all just in camera. So it's fun. I don't recommend that, but you learn a lot. While I was at UC Riverside, a buddy of mine was going to USC. I was so jealous. And I was like, oh, I wish I was good enough to get in there. That's where all my hero filmmakers went, like Lucas and Zemeckis and Coppola. And you see like Spielberg's names on the wall and Bryan Singer's names on the wall. And then they crossed his name off the wall. Some of the greatest filmmakers and writers and directors and producers of all time have gone through there. It's amazing. Posers. It's really phenomenal, but I never thought it was in the cards. So he was interning in SC. So I was like, hey, can I come visit you and stay with you? I have this internship at Sony Pictures, but I'm commuting so far from Riverside. It's like a 90-minute drive each way. And the traffic, it was terrible in Los Angeles. So I was like, yeah, sure. So I went to the Sony lot and I was actually at a company called Phoenix Pictures. It's one of the subsidiary companies for Sony. They had like an overall deal at Sony and Phoenix Pictures was great. I started off in the story department where you're just copying scripts and taking coffee around and doing mindless data entry and doing some coverage. And you do it with a smile and it starts to wear you down. But the best part of that internship was that I was there so early because of how far I had to drive. So I get to know the rest of the staff there. And I would be the last one to leave. So I'm there with all the executive assistants who were just like burning midnight oil because of what the job demanded. So that actually moved me out of the story department. I ended up being on the executive's desk. And his name is Mike Medavoy. And Mike Medavoy, he's probably a name most people might not recognize unless you're in the industry. And you're like, oh yeah, he's got 8 best pictures. So, I mean, he's got like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He worked on Rocky. He's just Black Swan and other films. So he's just had this huge spanning career. So I got to be on his desk. And that's where I was really like thrown to the wolves a little bit to see what Hollywood was like. So the first assistant would take like cigarette breaks all the time. And I would just sit there like terrified whenever the phone would ring because it would always be an agent screaming at me. I need Mike now. I need to talk to him right now. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. What's your name? And how do you spell that? And they're like, put him on the phone. Like just screaming at me. It was just so much emotional damage from that.
Your own Devil's Wear Prada situation there.
The stories are true. Like the Hollywood story stuff. I remember you just get these funny phone calls that would come in. Okay. I'll tell this one. So this one phone call comes in and you get this, it's this guy who's got this really gravelly voice and he's talking really slow. He's like, so yeah, is Mike there? I'm like, I'm so sorry. He's in a meeting right now. Can I take a message? He's like, oh yeah. I heard Mike's got a colonoscopy today. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. He goes, yeah, just tell him not to worry. They're just going to stick a giant hose in his ass. And it was just like silence. And I'm like, is that it? He goes, yeah, just tell him Marlon called. I'm like, okay. The assistant comes back in. I'm like, okay, so I got this message from Marlon about this hose going in his ass. Like, is this for real? Do I give this to Mike? She goes, yeah, that's Marlon Brando. Yeah, you have to give that to him. So I give him the note. Mike goes, throws it up, laughs, goes and does his thing. 2 weeks later, Marlon Brando dies, which was like the craziest thing. And it turns out they were like best friends. And Mike Medavoy ends up giving like the eulogy, his funeral. Little things like that were just like peppered in throughout my experience. Like you're driving people around. I'm like, oh, I'm just driving Steve Zalian, one of the greatest screenwriters of all time, to the airport. And I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like, a dumb intern. Those things start to accumulate. And that led into my desire to like get on set. So I was a production assistant on 24, that Fox TV show with Kiefer Sutherland. And that was brutal. I was like,
I've heard of it.
Right? Yeah. That was brutal because that's a show on the run, which means there's very few set days. So you were just locking down like the worst parts of Los Angeles, like the craziest areas around the craziest armpits of LA. And I remember this one time, it was the summer. It was so hot. We're in downtown LA. We're shooting some chase scene outside and we're sweaty and everyone's like looking at their skin and we have like these little black flakes on our skin. We're like, what is this? What's falling out of the sky? And the location manager comes by. He goes, Oh, it's probably from that crematorium over there. And we're just like, that's what we do for this job. That was a crazy show. It was super hard, especially when you move into the night work. Because, 24 hours, so you're like shooting all the hours of the day. And you just get into all the night stuff. So it's just like weeks and weeks and weeks of night shoots. And it was brutal, but it was a great learning experience. And I was so happy and thrilled to be there. So the crew was like, we love guys like you that have like all this boundless energy and are so thrilled to be here, because they're a little bit jaded and the show's really taking its toll. So this is like, the hop, skipping and jumping you're doing to like go from like in a studio to the set and then into like a production company. And then my next step was like Mark Burnett. Before I got to him, I was working for 2 executives under him, creating a couple of shows, and then their deals ended. And then Mark needed a new assistant because it was like Survivor, the Office edition, like working there, which was great. I really loved my time there. There was a lot to learn from Mark. I mean, he's like just such a mogul in Hollywood. He's got a star on the Walk of Fame. I got to be there for that. And just seeing how he like handles business and does business, that was just an amazing experience to be a fly on the wall for. But I let him know like up front, like, I'm an aspiring filmmaker. That's what I want to do. He's like, good, do it. It's like, you get one chance at life. Like, make sure you're doing what you want to do. And I said, okay, great. And he's so charming. He's one of these people who just walks in the room and there's like an energy about them and everyone just wants to like be around Mark and be closer to Mark. And it's just true. And he's just like so friendly and charming and just epitome of like the law of attraction. Like what he's putting out, he's like calling back to him. And I got to work on a show called On the Lot with him. That was like my specialty project because it was a DreamWorks co-production with Mark Burnett Productions. And I'm like, great, I really want to work like on the feature side. And the show was all based on making short films. It was a competition-based show trying to find the next great filmmaker. They would get a production deal with DreamWorks as like the finale prize. And Steven Spielberg was like one of the people involved with the show. And we had different guest judges, and Carrie Fisher was one of the judges of the show. So I was like such a nerd around her. I was just so awkward. I was just like, oh, I really want to talk about you being Princess Leia. And I can't do it, but it's so in my eyes every time I'm around.
I know. You got to subtly back into that one.
I would just say like the dorkiest thing. So we had this elevator that would be on the fritz every once in a while. And I remember meeting her in the garage and like escorting her to like Mark's office. And the elevator did like this bouncing thing. And I'm like, it's just like Survivor, the elevator. And nobody laughed. And I'm like, I just hate myself right now. I was like, I got it for me. Turns out I just started early with the dad jokes before I was a dad.
That's funny. All right. So did you get to meet Spielberg or Goffin, or he was part of that too, right? David Goffin.
There was an executive, David Goffin. Then there's like David Geffen of
you're right. That's
right. So it does get confusing. Yes, David Goffin. I worked with him. He's a sharp guy, super smart. He just sees all the angles. He's definitely on top of everything, stay in front of everyone. And we did work with Steven Spielberg. When we were shooting the finale of On the Lot, Steven Spielberg was also on the Universal lot filming Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And he like had to take we had to schedule around his lunch break from the production to come shoot the finale and shake the hands and do all that. Meanwhile, we were also shooting across town the finale for the show The Contender, which is the boxing show that Mark had. And that was fantastic because we had all these live fights going on and prize fights happening. It was just like crazy. There was all these shows happening simultaneously all the time. It was just crazy hours. It was just 12, 14, 16-hour days in an office, not even on set. It's just in an office, just fielding crazy phone calls and putting together crazy travel schedules for Survivor, all kinds of stuff like that.
So is it crazy to be on the set of On the Lot when you want to be a contestant at the same time?
There's just this desperation that's just inside of you. Like, oh, I just want to be a part of this so bad. I want to be one of those contestants, but I wouldn't have been ready for that anyway. So looking back, it's like, it's okay. Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen to get where I am today. So there's no regrets there. You're so close to it. You're just on these major studios that you love. They have all these theme park rides and there's charged with so much meaning and history that you want to be a part of that so bad, but it's cool. You're still participating in it. You're around these people, you're witnessing it. And, it demystifies some things because you're behind the scenes, like watching how sausage is made. And, so it kind of brings those walls down a little bit and you start to get an idea of like how hard you really have to work to get to these places because these people are so dedicated, so hardworking, and have put these systems in place to help them like get to that point and maintain that level. Like even the guest judges you would have, like Michael Bay would be a guest judge. on the show. You get a few minutes to like escort him around and show him where his office is going to be and introduce him to other people. And then you let him go. But you get 5 minutes to like shoot the breeze with him while he's walking around, and you just pick up what you can and you realize, oh, outside of a movie set, he seems like a really nice guy because he's just like super friendly and sweet. And then everything's like horror stories about, how he runs a set. So you see like the different sides of people. And sometimes you think, oh, our directors playing their own types of characters in the different scenarios they're in.
There's a lot of big names associated with this, but yeah, Chelsea Handler said, nope, I'm not hosting this.
There's a lot of people involved, and it was a great experience, like being around like all the different guest hosts, because then I would jump off and be a producer on the MTV Movie Awards. I had to like really fight and earn that, because we did one, I think it was like 2007 or 2008. And then I did like the following year. So I was Mark's assistant on that one. So I got to see how the whole thing was run, and Mark's everywhere. So I would be like his representative, and all the executives would be like, okay, what would Mark do in the situation? Or what would be his taste profile? Or can you get this in front of him? Yeah. And then next year I just leveled up, and I was like, hey guys, why don't I just work on the show as a producer? Because this would be one of my roles is, the right hand to Mark producing the show. I'm trafficking all the information. We're getting these decisions made. I'm his consigliere of sort. It just worked. So it was like my first producing credit, and worked on that for a year. And that was a great experience. But, I felt like I was on a ship going in this direction, and I wanted to be on the boat going in that direction. So that's when USC came into the picture.
Sorry to interrupt. Have to take a quick break. And we're back with Evan Matthews. We're going to dive a little deeper into the MTV Movie Awards. Do you remember anything notable from that MTV Movie Awards? There's always something that kind of marks every year.
That year that I worked on the show, I remember it was Coldplay and the Pussycat Dolls both had like huge musical numbers. It was the year of Tropic Thunder and the first Iron Man movie. So it was huge. I got to go to like all these early screenings, like all the cast screenings with these, because like the studios want the MTV Movie Awards to be a part of that, to really push it, to make it a part of the show as promotional material. So we're like, cool. And it's like, it's just nuts. You're like in a screening room with Robert Downey Jr. or Ben Stiller in the cast of Tropic Thunder. Try to imagine going to a Tropic Thunder like cast screening. And if you remember the beginning of the movie, it's all the commercials that introduce each of the characters and like what they're about.
Right.
Like the Booty Sweat commercial, or it's the Fatties trailer. It's like all these things. So we didn't know what was going on. And man, we're just laughing our asses off. We're having a great time. We're like, yeah, this has got to be a part of the show. And then seeing Robert Downey Jr. playing Lieutenant, whatever it was, in Tropic Thunder, we're just like, how's this going to work?
They're still trying to make issue of it today, but they're not gonna. It's so funny.
It's just genius. And then Iron Man the same year. It's just crazy to like be there. I mean, me and the producers are like looking at each other, like, what's going on? And there's so many things happening that year. It's like the year like Lady Gaga came out, and we're at Jimmy Iovine's office at like Interscope Records, and he's like playing all the records for all of the different artists he wants us to possibly put in the MTV Movie Awards. So this guy who's like legendary, he's like, there's Elton John's piano. Here's all pictures of him with like Justin Timberlake and all these other super crazy famous singer-songwriters. He's like, oh yeah, here's the Lady Gaga album. She's about to break out. She's going to be huge. Here, listen to this. What really helped get the Pussycat Dolls onto the show is that when we're in Jimmy's office, he makes like this phone call. He goes, oh, are they here? Oh, guys, you'll never believe this. They happen to just be showing up today. And all the girls like just come in the room and like do a live performance of what they would do on the show. And me and the producers are laughing because we're like, we know this is like set up, but we're really happy that they did this because it totally sold us on this. And it was fantastic. But actually, one of the most memorable things from the whole show is accidentally making eye contact with Johnny Depp before he was going to go present a reward. Because I was like the talent shuffler behind the scenes on like show day. I get like, okay, who's presenting next? And I don't know what it was. I felt like I made like eye contact with someone I shouldn't have or something. I was like, oh no, I looked directly into his eyes. I don't know why that just like stands out as a memory of mine. But I'm like, I made eye contact with Johnny Depp. Is that bad? Did I do that thing? Did I throw him off?
Probably because he internalized part of your soul and he now uses it during his acting. But
yeah, he drew something out of me. I lost something that day.
That's a whole movie, Evan, in itself. Like one of those inside John Malkovich's head type thing. That type of thing, like what happens, how Johnny Depp gets his power.
And then he goes home and pins a picture of me to the wall. Got a picture,
exactly.
A piece of that guy's soul.
I'm going to assume you're not responsible for The Apprentice, or if you are, I don't want to hear about it. But
It happened. The show happened. It was one of many shows. There was a lot of moving pieces at the time.
I watched it. I was big on Survivor early. My daughter's still obsessed with Survivor.
Oh, yeah.
I was like OG Survivor. I watched the original series.
Oh, yeah. People were getting hurt and infections and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, it was crazy back then because that's when like pirates would like show up on the coast and crazy standoffs and showdowns. And we're getting calls from the producers. It's like, yeah, there's like Somali pirates on the shore and, you know, it's like Captain Phillips type stuff. Like, just hold your ground. Don't show fear. It was, and everything ended up working out, but there was just always crazy stories coming from the set of Survivor. And it's just like, I hope everything's working out okay. And then Mark would like want to go. He'd take his family. It's okay. All right, you're going to take this private jet. You're going to fly to this air base. And then you're going to take this helicopter to this island. And again, another helicopter for refuel and take it to the next place. Oh, and you want to bring your dogs with you. So we're going to do. And you just make it work. And it's just an adventure in its own. And it was really fascinating to see how like people on that level, how they operate and how they get things done. You just got to figure it out. There's like, no, you can't tell these people no. It's like, oh, I don't know how we're going to do this, Mark. It's like, well, figure it out. Get it done. So that type of problem solving, like in the office there, and taking that like into film school, it's like, oh, then you're like, any of these little problems that happen with like a short film aren't real problems. And you'll see somebody else who's having a mental breakdown in the bathroom and crying. I'm like, are you okay? What happened? Who died? Oh, we lost the location. I'm like, dude, come on. Oh, I worked an 8-hour day. I'm dying, man. I'm like, don't tell me that. I had to sleep with a phone under my pillow for 3 years straight. It was a BlackBerry too. It was back then.
What did you do with Ryan Reynolds at Harper's Bazaar?
That was like during and after film school. I was shooting like behind the scenes, like cover shoot stuff. And it's just random celebrities. We got in just with a passion with fashion photography with my roommate at the time, who was huge into like photography and being a DP. So we were like natural buddies that went all the way back to my UC Riverside days. And we got in with the fashion directors at Harper's Bazaar and Esquire magazine. So we started like shooting behind the scene cover shoots. And that's one of those things where Ryan Reynolds like is like the person that day. And we're like, oh, how cool is this? We're working with. And like what you see is what you get. Like how he is for most of his roles, it's just who he is as a person. He's just like that. He's just cracking jokes like as he's getting dressed and they're like doing his hair and makeup and putting on different outfits and trying on ties and bowling or whatever. He's just making little commentaries and it's like it's like own little show, totally improving through life. It's fun to witness that. I want to stay out of the way and be a fly on the wall and catch it. But that was a great like one man band portion of like life where me and my buddies were like just shooting everything, capturing all the sound with like onboard mics that we have mounted and then going home and cutting it all together and putting a soundtrack and then finishing and exporting and getting it off to the client. We did that for a while. It was fun. It didn't pay hardly anything. We just did it because we loved it and it kept us active. And we had all the DSLRs and we got to play with equipment and like little sliders and different things we'd pick up and try out. You know, meanwhile, you're trying to like get a career going. It was great to have that in between. And it actually led to like a fashion photography like DVD series we shot over a course of like half a year. We just kept going back and shooting more footage. And that was a great experience too, because that was like the first big project we did together. Put together a whole educational series. So it was fascinating. We learned a lot. It made us better filmmakers.
How does it feel like with the Teleios Act when you got like tons of notice in film festivals? You know, you 9 wins, 18 official selections. So it must feel good. I mean, when I watched your shorts, they're not just shot great. I mean, they're acted great. The story's great. Everything is great about it. And the highest compliment I can give you is I watched it at 1 speed.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And we had a short festival run with Teleios because that's right when like COVID broke out. And all of a sudden the theaters shut down, the festival shut down. We're getting like refunds left and right on our festival submissions because like they didn't know when they're going to reopen. So, and you usually get like a 2-year window to have a festival run. So it was kind of like a little blessing in disguise because you can really, as a filmmaker, you can get caught up in just doing film festivals like indefinitely. And you're just like delaying working on your career because with a short film, you're pretty limited with what you can do. You can't monetize it for very much. I know there's ways to do that, but still, you're not really going to like make a life on that. So you have to start moving in the direction of like screenwriting and creating your own content and making your career. But, I learned a lot from Recoil and running the festival circuit and participating in that. The more I participated, the more successful we were. So right out of the gates with Teleios Act, I knew that I wanted to be very active in the festivals, very active with the people who worked at the festivals and the festival directors, staying in touch with them on Film Freeway or whatever platform you like to use for submissions. Yeah, so we started scooping up a lot of awards really fast. We won a grand jury prize like in India. I won a Best Actress award, I won a Best Director award, and like a handful of other ones in between. And the very first festival, we won the Audience Choice Award. And that's great because once you realize you're connecting with your people, that feels fantastic. And I feel like a lot of the career I've had prepared me for those two particular short films because they were really ambitious. Whenever you're in a situation where you're world building, you're not just shooting like modern Los Angeles as is. You're like, you were going to have to go make very specific decisions about every aspect of the movie. So it's like, okay, what's their wardrobe going to look like? And what does that mean? And what's the color theory in your film? And how's that going to affect your lighting and your cinematography and the type of lenses you want to use and the equipment you need for your camera? And are you going to live on a dolly the entire shoot? Or are you going to do sliders and hi-hats and all other types of tricks or tripods or handheld or steady? That's a whole design landscape you're having with your DP. And it comes down to budget and resources and locations where you can fit. So that all matters because if you're building sets and you're in a claustrophobic little set like the Recoil spaceship, you're really limited. Or we go to an existing stage, the hospital set for like Teleios Act, we can't fly walls in and out and move things around. It's a standing set. So how are we going to work within that? One thing for Teleios Act, to get all those exteriors, like the rooftop scene, we didn't have permits for that. Can I say that? I don't know. I guess it's too late now. And it was going to be too expensive, like pay the actual fees to do it. So I actually like cased the place. I was like, okay, what would they do in the Italian job? All right, I'm going to go like watch the security guard rotation schedule. And I'm going to go here every single day and know what people's routines are and know what the lunch rush is like and the breakfast rush. So I was like casing this rooftop in Burbank saying, okay, how can I figure out the best time and window to steal all of our shots? So I figured it out over a few weeks of just going back to the same spot. And we had to shoot between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. That was our window to get everything on the rooftop. And hair and makeup girl was like 90 minutes late. So we had to have one of our producers do like the hair and makeup. And she did a fantastic job. Her name's Rachel Mullins. She plays the nurse in the beginning of the movie. She's one of the producers. She's an actress too. And she's fantastic. She's like one of the coolest people and very good at her job. She just like knuckled down, got it together, got the job done, put the blood on the people who needed the blood on them. And we have to shoot this thing. And we're shooting it. And next thing you know, we're like tail lights are going and the car's going down the thing right when like security's coming up. So it all timed out like perfect. And the lunch rush hit. So all the cars came and filled up the whole roof. And we got out of there like just in time. And then we had like move locations all the way to like Lake Balboa, which is in like the northwestern part of Los Angeles. So it's a complete opposite end of town. So the whole crew has to go to this park location. And it's not like you can just Google like an address in the park. You have to like find this spot on a map somewhere. So we're texting photo clues to everybody. Like, this is where we're going to be. And we just stole everything for like one entire day, which is crazy and thrilling. I mean, that's like total guerrilla style. You're the most alive because you're just like, we might not make this. We're going to blow it all. This is our last day to have all the camera rental stuff, the actors, everything, the food, the PAs, everyone volunteering. We had to like populate this little play scene at the end with the kids in the park. And we were lucky one mom happened to have like 9 kids because she just had a big family, and then she like opened up the van doors. I'm like, cool, we have all of our extras. This is fantastic.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, there's so many things that just start falling into place. It couldn't have happened any other way.
It's really cool. What are you working on now? What's next for Evan?
Oh, so it's one of those moments where you've had like this 17-year career, and then like 10 days ago, you get a phone call from a producer friend who just had lunch with from a fellowship I did years ago. And we just had a great, deep, meaningful, heartfelt conversation that turned into, Evan, your whole life story and all your twists and turns and drama and highs and lows completely overlap with all the story points in the script that we're getting ready to go into production, but we're hearing pitches from directors right now. And so I got that call. She's like, okay, you're like an 11th hour ad. and we need you to read the script as soon as possible and pitch it like in like a couple of days. You're like the last person we're going to hear from. We've already heard from all the other potential directors, but she's like, I think you're right. You just match. So I pitched the daylights out of this thing. I was really truly just so emotionally attached. The story is called Motherland. The title might change at some point, but right now it's called Motherland. You can check it out on IMDb and start to see like as we populate it with credits. And it's another dystopic sci-fi leaning world cautionary tale. And pretty much it's a world where parents are not allowed to raise their own children, but have to like oversee like children being raised in a society in like this experimental government run program. And this woman like has an epiphany and finds her daughter by accident that's in her program and wants to help her like get out of this system. So it has many themes, similar themes to Teleios Act. So anyway, right now we're in pre-production in the LA portion. In about 2 weeks, we're going to fly to New York to do the last 3 weeks of on the ground pre-production. And then we have about 18 days to film. And we'll do some post in New York, and we'll have it in the can before the end of the year, and that'll come out in 2024. So I'm like in full swing, like full blown production mode. We're getting a cast list soon. We're looking at locations. It's just all kinds of stuff. I'm thrilled. I got a great team. It's moving along. It's been packed, but I love it. It's like you're all day long. We're just trying to find all the best people for the job.
That's awesome. Evan, you're incredible. I love your story, everything you've done. Your work's incredible. I'm going to put links to everything. Where can people keep up with you on the socials? Where do you hang out?
Yeah, I spend most of my time on Instagram. So if you want to find me at Evan B. Matthews, the letter B, Evan B. Matthews, over on Instagram, you could probably throw my handle in there as well. I'm documenting making my debut feature film so people will see what that's like to go on the ride with me. So every day you'll probably see in my stories specifically, that's more like the moment to moment stuff. I'll put stuff on my wall as well. But a lot of the stuff in the stories, I'm just like on the fly, capturing moments, going to meetings, like rewrite stuff, introducing some of the other players behind the scenes. It might be awkward for them, but I'm used to it. But yeah, you want to keep up with it and ask questions. I'm very interactive. I love like giving feedback. I just want to provide value to people. You have questions like, should you or shouldn't you go to film school? Ask me. It's not right for everyone. It's probably not right for most people, especially in the modern era. So yeah, I just want to share and give back. And this is one of the ways to do it.
Evan Matthews, you're awesome. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it.
Hey, so Jeff, I've had a great time.
All right. How amazing was Evan Matthews? I know. So great. So talented. So talented. You got to check out Teleios Act and Recoil. There's links in the show notes. Definitely watch those. Like I said, I watched them on one speed. If you know what that means, you know how good they are. All right. Well, we're at the end of the interview. That means the episode is over. I can't believe it either. One more huge thank you to my guest, Evan Matthews. And of course, a huge thank you to all of you for coming back week after week. It means the world to me, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.